The atmosphere around Celtic has shifted in subtle but noticeable ways over the last few days, and that feeling became even clearer after the most recent press conference. There was a different tone in the room, a sense that the conversation flowed more naturally, with answers that felt open rather than guarded. It was not about grand promises or dramatic declarations, but about clarity, calmness, and a manager who seemed increasingly comfortable in his surroundings. That alone matters, especially at a club where pressure never eases and every word is examined closely by supporters who live and breathe every result. What stood out most was how composed and articulate the manager appeared. There was a rhythm to the way he spoke, an ease that had perhaps been missing earlier. In previous weeks, there were moments when explanations felt tangled or overly abstract, but this time there was a stronger connection between the questions and the answers. He spoke with confidence, not arrogance, and there was a sense that he wanted people to understand his thinking rather than hide behind vague statements. That openness is refreshing, particularly after periods where communication felt clouded and overly political. The timing of this press conference cannot be ignored either. A win always changes the mood, and football is ruthless in that sense. Confidence grows quickly when results arrive, and suddenly body language shifts, smiles appear more easily, and conversations become lighter. Training ground footage has reflected that change, with players interacting more freely, sharing jokes, and showing signs of belief returning. These details might seem small, but in a squad that has struggled for rhythm, they carry weight. The discussion around recent performances focused heavily on competitiveness. That word was repeated with intent because it touches on something supporters have questioned. There had been games where intensity dipped too easily, where duels were lost and reactions were slow. This time, the emphasis was on fighting for every ball, staying switched on, and showing pride in the shirt. It was not presented as a finished product, but as a step forward, something to build on rather than celebrate excessively. Attention then naturally shifted towards the upcoming transfer window. January always brings tension, hope, and frustration in equal measure at Celtic. The message publicly was one of analysis and evaluation, a manager still learning about his squad, still deciding what profiles are needed. That stance is understandable on the surface, yet it also raises expectations behind the scenes. Supporters know that weaknesses exist, and there is a clear feeling that reinforcements must arrive early rather than late. With several matches packed into the opening weeks of the new year, delays could prove costly. The idea of recruitment being a shared process was also addressed, combining internal scouting with the manager's own experiences and preferences. Communication was the key word there, suggesting collaboration rather than conflict. More importantly, there was a clear emphasis on character as much as ability. Players must fit the system, yes, but they must also cope with the demands of Celtic, the noise, the scrutiny, and the relentless expectation to win. That understanding shows awareness of what this club requires beyond tactical diagrams. When individual players were mentioned, the tone remained supportive and measured. There was an effort to highlight commitment and happiness within the squad, especially regarding players who have previously been linked with moves away. The message was that focus remains on the present, on contribution, and on maintaining unity. Even when form has been inconsistent, there was recognition of effort and value, particularly when players are used in roles that best suit their strengths. The subject of positions and flexibility came up with a lightness that reflected the relaxed nature of the press conference. Answers were delivered with a smile, sometimes even laughter, which helped humanize the exchange that matters in a media environment that can often feel tense and adversarial. Journalists were met with openness rather than defensiveness, and that dynamic could shape future coverage, especially if performances on the pitch continue to improve. There was also empathy shown towards players struggling for confidence. Missed chances were discussed not as failures, but as moments that weigh heaviest on the player involved. The idea of putting an arm around someone rather than publicly criticizing them speaks to a leadership style based on trust and understanding. In a dressing room, that approach can build resilience, especially during difficult spells. Leadership itself was another topic that revealed interesting insight. Different styles were acknowledged, from vocal organizers to those who lead purely through actions. Recognizing that balance is important because a squad needs both voices and examples. It also showed that leadership is not forced into a single mold but allowed to emerge naturally based on personality and experience. Injury updates offered little change, which in itself carries a sense of frustration. The squad still feels stretched, with absences lingering and returns slow to arrive. That uncertainty feeds into the wider concern about depth and durability, particularly during a congested schedule when players are missing without clear explanations. Speculation fills the gap, and that can become distracting for everyone involved. One situation in particular has raised questions due to a lack of information. A player who had featured regularly was suddenly absent, not seen in matches or training footage, and not mentioned publicly. Whether it is a minor knock or something more significant remains unclear, and that silence naturally fuels debate as the transfer window approaches. Clear communication could ease those concerns, but until then, uncertainty remains part of the narrative. Overall, there is a cautious optimism beginning to form. It is not built on illusions or exaggerated claims, but on small signs of progress. A calmer manager, a happier training environment, and a competitive performance have combined to lift spirits slightly. That optimism is fragile, though, and everyone knows it can disappear quickly if results falter. The upcoming match represents another test, one that Celtic simply must pass to maintain momentum and belief. As attention turns toward the next fixture, the pressure sharpens rather than fades. Celtic do not have the luxury of gradual improvement without results to support it, especially when facing a side that has struggled heavily this season. On paper, it is the kind of match that demands authority, not hesitation, as supporters expect intensity from the first whistle, control of territory, and a level of urgency that reflects what is at stake. Anything less will quickly undo the positive feeling that has begun to surface around the club. Away form has been a persistent concern, and that reality hangs over this trip as well. Performances on the road have lacked consistency, with spells of decent football undone by lapses in concentration or confidence, and that is why this match carries extra weight. It is not simply about 3 points, but about showing that lessons are being learned and that standards are rising regardless of venue. A convincing display would speak louder than any press conference ever could. The squad itself still feels like a work in progress. There are areas where depth is thin and others where roles are still being defined. That uncertainty can affect rhythm, particularly when players are asked to adapt quickly or cover unfamiliar positions, and at the same time, competition for places remains limited in certain areas, which places extra responsibility on those selected. Every performance becomes an audition, not just for the next match, but for how the squad may evolve once the transfer window opens. January looms large in the background of all this. Everyone connected to the club understands that recruitment will shape the second half of the season. The challenge lies not only in identifying the right players, but in acting decisively. Slow movement in the market has hurt Celtic before, leaving new signings short of sharpness when they are most needed. With crucial domestic matches arriving early in the month, preparation now is essential, even if that work is not yet visible publicly. There's also the emotional element of the season to consider. Football around this time of year carries its own energy with packed schedules, heavy pitches, and a demand for resilience. It tests mentality as much as tactics. That is where leadership, in all its forms, becomes vital. Vocal figures can rally the group during difficult moments, while quieter leaders set the tone through effort and professionalism. Celtic will need both if they are to navigate the weeks ahead successfully. International commitments have already started to affect the squad, with players joining their national teams and minutes being carefully managed. While representing one's country is an honor, it adds another layer of complexity for the club. Monitoring fitness, managing fatigue, and reintegrating players smoothly all become part of the equation. These factors rarely dominate headlines, but they influence selections and performances more than many realize. Officiating and match management also enter the conversation as the next game approaches. Decisions can shift momentum quickly, particularly in tight away fixtures where crowd influence plays a role. Staying disciplined, focused, and emotionally controlled will be crucial. Celtic cannot afford distractions, especially when confidence is still rebuilding and margins feel fine. Supporters remain central to everything. Even during periods of frustration, there is a deep desire to believe again, to feel that the team is moving in the right direction. Most fans do not enjoy negativity for its own sake. They crave reasons to be hopeful, signs that effort is being matched by direction. When those signs appear, even briefly, they are noticed and amplified. That is why this phase feels important. It is about establishing habits, reinforcing identity, and showing that recent improvements were not isolated moments. Training sessions, team talks, and tactical plans all feed into that process, but ultimately it is the 90 minutes on the pitch that define perception. One strong performance can steady nerves, while one poor showing can reopen doubts that never fully disappear. The coming days will reveal much about where Celtic truly stand. There is belief trying to take root, encouraged by calmer leadership and a more positive internal atmosphere. But at the same time, expectations remain unforgiving. Results are demanded, not promised. Each match becomes a checkpoint, testing whether progress is real or merely imagined, and whether this group is ready to respond when scrutiny intensifies rather than fades. As Saturday approaches, there is a cautious optimism in the air, tempered by recent scars. Supporters want to believe that the worst of the turbulence is over, that the early struggles were part of an inevitable adjustment period. Whether that belief is justified will depend less on words and more on what unfolds on the pitch. Celtic do not need miracles, but they do need consistency, intensity, and a clear sense of purpose, especially away from home. If the team can approach the Livingston match with the same competitive edge shown last time out, if they can impose themselves early and manage the game intelligently, then confidence will continue to grow. That, in turn, would provide a stronger platform heading into a demanding run of fixtures and an important transfer window. For now, everything feels delicately balanced, poised between renewed hope and lingering doubt. With the next 90 minutes set to tip the scales one way or the other, as this evolving chapter under Wilfried Nancy continues to take shape. Still, goodwill is a finite resource. Celtic supporters are passionate, loyal, and demanding, and patience has limits when standards slip. The manager's task now is to turn improved atmosphere into tangible outcomes. Winning breeds belief, belief breeds confidence, and confidence allows ideas to flourish. It is a simple cycle in theory, but notoriously difficult to sustain. Each match offers evidence either for or against the direction of travel, and the margin for error remains slim. Before we proceed, subscribe to our channel and enable notifications to receive all exclusive news about Celtic FC. Don't miss any details about your favorite team. It's extremely important for Celtic FC fans. Parkhead has been buzzing in a way it doesn't very often, even by Celtic standards. Word has been drifting through the East End that a true global star could be edging closer to the green and white, and the name on everyone's lips is James Rodriguez. Nothing official, nothing signed, but enough smoke to have supporters craning their necks and letting their imaginations run wild. The idea of Rodriguez pulling on a Celtic jersey feels almost unreal, yet the whispers persist. Sources close to the situation suggest informal talks have taken place, the kind that start as a quiet conversation and quickly grow arms and legs. Celtic, always keen to blend youth with experience, are said to be exploring the possibility of adding a player whose reputation alone would light up Parkhead. For Rodriguez, the attraction is rumored to be just as strong: a historic club, a demanding crowd, and a stage where passion matters as much as prestige. Around the stadium, folk are already picturing it. The Colombian playmaker gliding across the turf, the roar of the crowd swelling as he lines up a shot, the sense that something special might be brewing. It's no secret that Celtic have long fancied themselves as a destination for players seeking both football and feeling, and Rodriguez fits that romantic notion perfectly. His career has been a journey across Europe and beyond, and there's a sense that Glasgow could offer a different kind of chapter, one rooted in intensity rather than glamour. Of course, rumours are cheap currency in football, and Celtic fans ken better than most how often big names are linked and never arrive. Still, this one feels different, charged with a belief that the move could make sense for all involved, whether it's ambition, timing, or sheer mutual curiosity. The speculation refuses to die down. For now, Parkhead waits, fueled by chatter and hope. If nothing else, the thought alone has given supporters a lift, a reminder that Celtic remain a club capable of dreaming big. And until the silence is broken one way or another, James Rodriguez and Celtic will continue to share the same sentence, sparking debate in pubs, on buses, and in the stands where football dreams are never far from reality. Hello, fan, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, as it means a lot to Celtic FC. Also, share your opinion about the news in the comments below. See you in the next video.